This is Jennifer Darty and Aaron Stive doing an oral history interview for East Carolina University, and we're at Hammock Beach State Park in Swansboro, North Carolina. The date is February 21st, 2023, and we're interviewing Claude Cruz. So, Mr. Cruz, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up, what year you were born, about your family, anything you want to tell us?
Yes, my name is Claude Cruz. I was born and raised in Wake County, a little town called Knightdale, North Carolina, on a farm. Attended school in Wake County, James and Shepherd High School. Went to Shaw University for a little bit. Then I got a job here at Hammock Beach in 1963. And I was married in 64. I have 2 children and 6 grandchildren, born in 1941.
I wanted to ask you about the New Farmers of America. We read the article that they when you were doing a program here. Could you tell me a little bit about that program and like your involvement with it? And
when I was in high school, I was in the New Farmers of America program at James and Shepherd High School, and we had a camp here at Hammocks, on the Hammocks, not in the park. It's just up the road a little bit. And that camp was for the New Farmers of America. And in 1957, I came to camp here. And in 1959, my senior year, I came to camp there. And we would have all types of projects, leather making, judging of animals, sporting events, basketball, horseshoe pitching, picnicking, and also going to the island itself. But that's what it was. And later on, that camp closed down. I guess about 65, and it came, and when they reopened it with the Future Farmers of America. Now, the Future Farmers of America was the white organization. When I was coming along, they were separate. We were the New Farmers of America, and they were the Future Farmers of America. So after desegregation, not integration, after desegregation, it came back as Future Farmers of America. But it's the S.B. Simmons NFA, New Farmers of America camp. And Mr. Simmons was a professor at UNC A&T State University in Greensboro. That's where it all came from. There again, schools weren't integrated, so A&T was for the black or the colored kids, and North Carolina State was for the whites. I did not go to a school with white people. Everybody in my school was black.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you mentioned like growing up on a farm, because like one project we're trying to do is like sort of actually document stories of black farmers. And I'm just curious, could you talk about a little bit more growing up on the farm and maybe why you decided not to go into farming, that you kind of went this other route?
My grandfather owned a small farm. I think it was like 150 acres, and that was not enough to support 2 families, my grandfather and my father. My grandfather was just he and one other person, but my father had 6 kids, so that was not enough to support him. So consequently, we had that, and then we shared crops. We were fortunate, because we didn't have to borrow money from the owner, because my grandfather owned property, so he could borrow his own money, so we didn't have to go through that process of paying money back. And we were able to share crop on 4th instead of half. If you lived on the farm that you were farming, you gave the owner half of what you made. But we didn't live on the farmer, on the man's land, so we would only give a 4th of what was made. The reason I didn't stay was because it just wasn't feasible to stay. Now that we talk about that, my son moved back to Raleigh, and he, they call him farmer, but he's really not farmer, because the farm has been divided up and it's even smaller now, but he has a small thing. But he raises chickens, bees, and he has a big garden. So I was surprised that he went into farming. He even bought a tractor. I was surprised he went back to go back to farming. But he moved back to the home place. After the place was divided up, we inherited some land, and we fixed it for him.
That's what I was wondering. So like the original grandfather's land, like it just kind of got divided by the heirs, and right. And so okay, and so some of your family still owns a little bit.
Well, all of it's still in the whole 150 acres. I guess is still in the Cruz family.
Oh, okay.
But some of my cousins, my 2 sisters have property there, and a brother has property out of that.
What crops did you all bring in when you?
What
crops did your
Oh,
grandfather
we had,
and your father do?
Tobacco was the main crop.
Okay.
Then we had wheat, corn, a little bit of cotton. And then we had truck farming. If you know what truck farming is, you grow vegetables. We grow tomatoes, corn, beans, green beans, peas. And my grandfather would put it on a truck and we drive it into Raleigh on Saturday to sell it. They call it truck farming. That's the way we made extra money. Cucumbers and that type of thing.
Could you talk a little bit about, you mentioned that the school that you grew up in was completely African American, because this was during segregation. We're just curious that, do you remember, like, because you're talking about like driving into Raleigh, did you ever travel with your family? Did you, because we recently had an exhibit on the Green Book, and we talked a lot about Green Book and the difficulties in traveling. Did you have any?
We did.
memories
I don't know much
stories?
about the Green Book. We did travel. As I said, my dad, all of his brothers and sisters, they finally moved away from the farm. They all went north except for my dad. He was the only one that stayed. And we would go north, and we drive. I just don't remember. There were places that we stopped. I know we stopped just before we got to Washington, D.C., and then we stopped on the other side of Washington. I do remember this place. It was called the Maryland House. I don't know if you know, but we'd always stop there. Going and coming, it's called the Maryland House, and we'd stop. I was a little bit young when that was happening. When I started driving, I just don't remember. But there were places that we didn't stop when we were driving. I can't remember a lot of.
So I'll ask this question, then we can kind of we'll shift to you, Aaron. So just kind of continue on, like, when you said you went to school at Shaw, and then you ended up at the park. Was there something that made you want to become a park ranger? Like, can you talk about what your major was, what you studied there?
It was by accident.
That's usually how it happens.
I mean, really, it happened by accident. There was a man, the engineer that worked for the Division of Parks and Recreation, worked on the side, a civil engineer, and my grandfather wanted his property divided so he could give it to his children. And this man would come out, and it probably took him 2 years to survey the property to get it right for him to divide it among his children. His name was Walter Jones. I was talking to him when they were just talking. He said, "Wouldn't you like to work with parks?" And I knew nothing about a state park. I had been to Umstead as a Boy Scout at the Reedy Creek section, but I didn't know anything about state parks. And it went on, and I didn't think much of it. And like I say, I was at Shaw University. I had a sister going to Central and a brother in Barber College. There was 3 of us in school at the same time. Now, we didn't have a whole lot. And it was kind of like, my parents said, somebody's got to get a job, somebody's got to go to work. And I thought about parks, so I went back to parks. And I had been before, and they were looking for somebody permanent, and I didn't take it. That was at Umstead, at Reedy Creek section. So this time I went back, put in an application. They were looking for someone to come to hammocks. And ended up, I got down here. I don't know. That's how I got here. I ended up down here, and I had always planned to go back to school, and I never did because it was a good career and I enjoyed it.
Let me back up one question just about your family, because it sounds like maybe education was important. Like get you to Shaw and with your sister. Like, could you talk about that in your family? Were your parents big proponents of education?
My mother was. She was a hard pusher. I had 3 sisters graduate from Central, and my brother graduated from Barber School, and my other brother went to Wake Community Technical College. So we all went. My mother pushed us very hard to go to school. I didn't learn very much, but I was the oldest of 6 children, and she pushed us.
All right. So I know it sounded like, so now in parks we have the individual parks hire people. Was that kind of what your hiring process was like? Could you tell me more about like the power structure back then?
When I came to, like I said, when I came to Parks and Recreation, there were 3 parks that were basic for color. There was the Reedy Creek section of Umstead, Jones Lake State Park, and Hamilton Beach. The superintendent, I was not a superintendent when I came. I was a Ranger 1, then I got promoted to Ranger 2. But back early, the superintendents made all the decisions on hiring. They hired the seasonal staff, they hired the Rangers, they made, they negotiated if they're buying land. That was the power structure. But later on, that kind of narrowed down. And I guess it's about 1970, 71 or 72. We had to make recommendations to Raleigh for people to be hired. And we didn't integrate the staff here until, I think it was 72. I integrated. I was the first superintendent to integrate the staff in parks, the seasonal staff. I hired a white lifeguard in 72. And that was a big talk.
Okay, so that was the first time white staff were hired. So I lost my train of thought on that one.
We were actually wondering this. Did like African Americans have to work at African American parks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to. There was 6 rangers. Well, one was a superintendent. Let's back up. We had one superintendent, Mr. James Johnson. I don't know what we need to call names. We had one superintendent at the Reedy Creek section of Homestead. We had a ranger in charge at Jones Lake who worked under the Singletary Lake, and a ranger in charge here at Hammocks. Those were the 4 people. Then the ranger here, he left, and they didn't want to put one person here because it's just too much for one person to operate a park. It's just, you can't do it. If the park is open 7 days a week, you get no time. So they brought 2 people here, brought myself and another man. They had 2 at Homestead, and they still had one at Jones Lake, and they still had one at Jones Lake. When we would have meetings, our superintendent's conference, they were always held at a park where there was cabins. You had cabins at Hanging Rock, had cabins at Morrow Mountain, and had cabins at Singletary Lake. Mount Mitchell had enough barrack space that you could meet there. And the reason was we could not go into the motels and stay in the same motels that the other people stayed in. We could not go in the restaurants. So consequently, we had the meetings in the state park, and the meals were catered to us. We have a meeting. And I guess, I don't know what year it was anyway. The first one I remember going to was in Carolina Beach, where we stayed in the motel together. And there was 3 rangers of the black parks, and that was myself, Mr. Powell, and Mr. Johnson. Well, they put 3 of us in the room.
Wow, okay.
All the other people had 2 people in the room. Because we were the only 3 blacks, we had 2 people in the room. 3. Then Mr. Powell had been working the longest, and Mr. Powell was, Mr. Johnson, and I was the young man on the road. So they got beds and I got a cart. I mean, that's just the way it was. But anyway, and that went on until about 74, 75, I guess. And we was having a meeting in Kinston, and I didn't have anybody to room with. And a gentleman by the name of Tommy Wagner. Do you know Tommy? Mm-hmm. Tommy Wagner was the superintendent at Hanging Rock State Park. And he called me up and he says, Claude, who are you rooming with? I said, I don't have anybody to room with. He says, how about being my roommate? And he and I were roommates. That, it was just kind of broke the chain, and, we were fine. But to go back to another story, when I was a sophomore at Shaw University, the first year where I was at Shaw University, when the school gave the picnic, we went to the Reedy Creek section. The year that I was a sophomore was in the 60s. We had the sit-ins in Raleigh. With the first group of students to go downtown to the Woolworths and the Cresses and the Walgreens counters, I was in that group. And we marched the whole spring. And then when we got ready to have the picnic, we were radicals. So we decided we were going to go to the Reedy Creek section, the Crabtree section of the park. So we go in, the bus goes in, and I drove my car, we go in, and they had a fit. The Rangers had a fit. They tried to get us out. They did all kinds of things. They locked the gate. Had got to the governor. The governor had told me he had to unlock the gate, blah, 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 the whole thing. Anyway, I remember this little short Ranger. Didn't know much about Rangers, but this little short man. And he was trying to get us out, and we didn't get out. Well, 2 years later, I'm working with Parks, and I go to a meeting, and I see this man. I said, he's the same man that was trying to get us out of the park. This Ranger. And he and I, before we both retired, we became the best friends, and we roomed together some. His name was Mr. Dillard. But I thought that was amazing how that turned around. And Leo was just a finer fellow you ever want to see. I mean, we rode to meetings together. We roomed together because he was in the East District and I was in the East District also because he was at Carolina Beach at that time. But anyway, that's the way things were then.
Could you talk about, just for people who don't know, how Umstead was set up? Because like half of it was segregated, right?
Yeah,
Like there was
right.
a white
That was
part.
right. There were wells. I'm trying to think of the people who gave the land. I can't remember. I never worked there, but I think it's wells. And one section was set aside for the blacks. That was the Reedy Creek section. The Crabtree section was for the white people. And like I said, when I was a Boy Scout, we camped out there, but I didn't know much about State Park. I was just a place to go camping. And Hammocks was developed in that same line. Hammocks Beach was developed was given to by the Sharp family. Dr. Sharp was a neurosurgeon from New York. He loved to come to North Carolina to hunt and fish. And on Camp Lejeune, there was a place called, in Brown Sound, there's a place called the Rod and Gun Club. Mr. John Lewis Hurst, who was the black man, was a guide for the club. And when people, the rich people, muckamucks would come down, he would take them out on boats, take them out hunting, fishing, whatever they wanted to do. And he struck up this friendship with Dr. Sharp, and they were really, really good friends. And when Camp Lejeune was coming in, they had to sell all that. Dr. Sharp asked Mr. Hurst to see if he could find a place where he could hunt and fish, be his own. And he looked at several places. Now, I did not meet Mr. Hurst, but I met his mother. I knew her. She was a real fine lady. Place up on 17, he looked at that, but there wasn't enough water there off the Trent River. And he ended up here at the Hammocks of the island, Bear Island. And at that time, Bear Island was owned by 3 different people. Somehow or another, they got the deeds and they got them all together and bought the island, and they bought most of the land on the mainland. I can't remember how many acres. It was several hundred acres. So Dr. Sharp was coming down, fishing and hunting. And he told Mr. Hurst, you farm the land, all the land, everything you make on the land is yours. Whatever you make, you keep. And so Mr. Hurst was doing it. Some of the people in Swansboro didn't like that. So they said, went to Dr. Sharp and says, a colored man can't work colored workers. You need a white man to oversee it. And Dr. Sharp says, no, I've got the right person. I don't know exactly what he said, but anyway, he told him no. So then they made some threats on the Hurst family. Now, this is where I've heard all kinds of things. Somebody said that Dr. Sharp put a $10,000 reward in Alto County, $4,000, and some say $20,000. That if anybody hurt the Hurstes, it was proven you could get that money. So that stopped all that. That stopped the talk on that. Like I said, Mr. Hurst died in August of '63, and I came in November '63. And Dr. Sharp died a year before that. I did not meet either one of those. But Mrs. Hurst I knew, and I knew Dr. Sharp's son. But in the meantime, Dr. Sharp says colored people have no place to go. They can't get to the beach. You got to go to South Carolina, either Virginia. I think there might have been one place in North Carolina that you could get to the ocean. So he was going to give all this to Mr. and Mrs. Hurst. Mrs. Hurst had taught school at one time, and she said, there's no way that we can get the resources to develop all this vast thing. So she suggested to him that he give it to the black teachers in North Carolina, because things were segregated at that time. And he agreed. So they came out and he gave the whole thing, the island and all the land on the mainland, except for a section of that was left for the Hurst family. The island was supposed to be developed in 15 years, and this was in 48, 50, somewhere along there. Anyway, in 63 to 15 years, or about 61, it was about to run out. So the corporation said, we can give it to the state, and they will develop it and put a bridge over there. So they approached it to the state of North Carolina. Anyway, it got down to Parks and Recreation, and they went to the meeting. And the Teachers Association was only going to give half the island. And one of the men, and the man at the table, he told me he was at the table in the negotiation. He said, it's all or nothing. And the teacher says, okay, you take the whole island, you're going to give us transportation over there. The teachers thought that they were going to put a bridge there. The teachers, and the transportation was the ferry boat, which I think was outstanding, because if they had put a bridge there, where you going to put cars? It would have ruined the whole island.
Yeah.
But that's,
Did they like make the requirement that African Americans be able to use it?
Oh yeah.
Was that part of it?
Oh yeah, it was that way.
Okay.
And now they charge. But see, just before I retired, about the time I retired, and I brought that up. I said, you go back and look. You're supposed to provide transportation. You're supposed to provide transportation. See, all the people are gone that know that now. So now they charge. And when I approached them with it, they said, well, we are not charging for the ride. I can't remember how. They were charging to go. I can't remember how they had it.
Some special wording in there.
Yeah, that's some special wording. But anyway, that's where they go. But to go back to that, like I said, I integrated staff in 72, but earlier than that, people, about 73, 74. The boat had come in, and we were all at the dock down there. Car drives up, and people won't get out of their car. They roll the window down and holler at you. So lady rolled the window down, and she talking, and I was going. So finally, I said, let's stop playing with it. So I'll go over. I said, yes, ma'am, could I help me? Yeah. And she talks and she talks. She talks and she talks. And she's asking all these questions. I knew what she was trying to say. She was trying to say, who could go to the beach? And I wouldn't answer. Every time she say something, I say something else. So finally she just says, well, can white people go over there? And I looked at her and I said, yes, ma'am, but they have to sit on the back of the boat. I don't know why I didn't get fired, folks. The stuff I used to do. and her husband cranked the car and they drove off. I did some things that just off chart. Like I said, I don't know why I didn't get fired because if I do it. But anyway, that's just one of the stories. It's just one of the stories.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And people were going to the beaches. The locals who had boats would go to the island, but they'd always stay on the ends. They would never come up to where the concession stand or the swimming area was. They'd always be on the end. Very few people came up there.
Are these the white locals?
Yeah, the white locals. Yeah, very few black people had boats back then. Just the white locals. And Swansboro was a different town when I came here. It was a different town, ladies. It was a different town. I don't want to tell you. It took some doing to do. It took. The first ranger was here. I don't know how you would say it, but he had his rights, and he wanted to push them. But you can be right. You may have the authority to do some things, but you don't have the backing to do it. Or you might have the backing to do some things, but you don't have the authority to do it. So you have to work those things to know when you can move and when you're not to move. So that was one of his problems. He pushed too hard, and that's why he got in trouble with some things.
Oh, okay. That is actually kind of one of the questions I did want you to talk about. I don't know too much about this, but one of my former supervisors said that rangers were commissioned sometime, I think in the 1970s. Is that right?
Yeah, the first ones, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Were you commissioned?
Yeah, I was commissioned. I got my commission, and no, I just took it out of my wallet. 74, 73.
What school did you go to?
You didn't go to school.
Could you tell us about how that worked back then?
I was grandfathered in. You were commissioned. I was commissioned with Bob Scott, and my commission did not run out. It was forever. And then later on, we started having to go to school. But my first commission, I didn't. But then I took a course over at Coastal Carolina Community College, and that was basically to see that I could use a weapon. I mean, it didn't go into the laws, into the general statutes or anything. Mm-hmm. Now we had a little book with all the rules and regulations on it. That if somebody would break it, we had a little book. We'd write a ticket on it and give it to them, and then we'd carry the other to the courthouse, and we give them a court date. But we wrote very few tickets. Then in the 80s, when Dr. Davis came, he did not like that situation. So all those things were no good, and we had to go to take the 180-hour course. At that time, I think it's a little more than that now. Go to BLAT as well.
Was that, I'm assuming then it was integrated. What was that experience
Which
like?
one?
The basic law enforcement.
Oh yeah,
training.
this is in the 80s.
Okay, yeah.
We were integrated, and we went to some went to Durham Tech, some went to Wake Tech. There was a big group of us who went to Whiteville, to Southeastern Community College. Big, it's like probably 35 of us, and we stayed at the barracks in Singletary Lake, and we drove down to Whiteville every day for that. And then we were commissioned and got weapons and all that stuff. But yeah.
Did your interactions change with park visitors, like before you were commissioned and then afterwards?
Not a lot. We had to change because people were getting. At one time, people would recognize you if you wore a uniform and a badge. You tell them, you got to do this. But now they don't do that. I mean, the world has changed. I would have a hard time working there. I would have to have an awful lot of training to be able to deal with the public the way they deal with them now. Because we were talking just before you came about all the shooting on the roads. I don't know if you heard about it or not. I mean, we had like 2 in Onslow County. One up in Maysville, right down the road, and they shoot at you. I don't. So people are a lot. We don't want to go into that, but that's people are not like they were.
Let's see. So you spent your career at Hammocks Beach.
Not all of it.
Oh, okay. Can you tell us?
I came here in '63, and '65. I went to Jones Lake for a year. Worked at White Lake, Lake Waccamaw, Singletary Lake, Jones Lake. Worked at the state lakes over there, Bladen Lakes, and then stayed there a year, and then I came back here in '66. And no, I came back. Yeah, '66. No, my timeline. Anyway, I came back, and in August of 1966, I was drafted into the Army. Now that was a life-changing experience, ladies. That was a life-changing experience. I was married. My wife was expecting, and I was 25 years old. Now, if you're 26, you weren't supposed to be drafted. If you had a child, you weren't supposed to be drafted. But I was in the largest draft the United States has ever had. It was the height of the Vietnam War. And I was drafted, went to Fort Bragg, did my basic training, left Fort Bragg, went to Fort Bliss, Texas, did my advanced training. And when they gave us our orders for leaving advanced training, the man came out, the sergeant came out and says, okay, all you fellas are going to Vietnam except 13. And I did not want to go to Vietnam. And he said, the 13 is not going, and he called one name before mine, and then my name. And there was 12 of us went to Panama, and one went to Korea. So I went to Panama for like 18 months, I guess, and I missed Vietnam. But that was a life-changing experience, I want to tell you that. For me, it was life-changing. And my son was born while I was over there because my wife was expecting when I left. And my son was born, then I came home 30 days, my wife got expected again, and my daughter was born when I came back.
Wow.
So.
Could you tell us how Panama was different than?
Panama.
Or was it just being in the Army that was?
Yeah, I was in the Army, but Panama was, they had people there from everywhere. I mean, it was like a melting pot. There were Germans, Italians, from Haiti, from all those islands. And Panama was, I know we could not go to town when they had elections because they would shoot up the ballot boxes. And we had the canal zone. We were in the canal zone. That was American owned that. And, President Carter turned that back to the Panamanians. The Panamanians run it now. But as long as we were in the canal zone, we were fine. You couldn't get out of the canal zone. Could get in some serious trouble during those election months. But then after that, you can go to the clubs and things down there. And just like any other base, there are places that you can't, that are off base to military people. There are places in camp at Jacksonville and off base to, off for the Marines. They can't go to those places, certain streets in Jacksonville. I was telling you about, I went went to Jones Lake to work. Now this story is going to be really, went to Jones Lake to work, and we had to tear a pier down on Lake Waccamaw. So they sent me down there to work with these 4 white guys. Now you got to remember, this is 1965. So we fixed one big jar of ice water, just a gallon jar of ice water, and we go down there. Nobody's got a cup. We out there working on that hot pier. Everybody's drinking out of this jar. Do you understand what I'm saying? Passing it and drinking. We're all drinking out of this jar. We break for lunch. We go up to the food grill. And I guess the guy that was the foreman or whoever's in charge, I wasn't in charge. He looks at me and says, "Cruz, what do you want me to bring you back?" And I use an expletive. "What do you mean?" "I'm going in." He says, "Oh, no, you can't go in there." I said, "Then if I can't go in there, nobody's going in there. We've been drinking out the same explicit jar all morning, and you telling me we can't go in there and sit down and eat? No, nobody's going in there." So we went to filling station. We got nabbed in a soda. That's life-changing experience, folks. I'm gonna tell you that is. I can't see. I just get, this is a jar. You drink out of it, I drink out of it, and you drink out of it. Then we go sit down and eat. I mean, you would do that now. You'd have cups, but or everybody had their own water bottle. But back then we didn't. We had one jar of ice water in a bag to keep it cool.
Do you think, like, was it like they didn't want to be seen with you in the restaurant, or do you think that like they didn't think that
I don't know what it
blacks
was.
were allowed in it? Or?
Well, no, they didn't allow it. Didn't allow
Okay.
blacks in there. That's basically what it was. They didn't allow blacks in there. But they don't allow.
But they were perfectly fine leaving you outside
Right.
and going
Yeah, we were fine.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I didn't understand that. And I went to the Cliffs in 81. I stayed here from 63 to 81. Then I went to the Cliffs in 81. They had a black ranger there before, but not a black superintendent. And it was just amazing how people, would do things now. Like I said, you got the power to do things, but you might not have the authority to do it, or you might have the authority to do it, not have the power to do it. So I go to the bank to make a bank deposit, and there's always people sitting in the bank. They go in. "You work at the Cliff now?" "I've got no uniform and a gun." "You work up there at the Cliffs?" "Yes, sir. Yeah, I work at the Cliffs." "Well, who's in charge up there now?" "So what are you supposed to say?" "I'm the man." "No, that's not what I say. The person's on duty is in charge. I mean, if I'm not on duty, I can't be in charge." And they would do that like 3 or 4 times a week. They knew who it was. They knew, And so that went on, and at that time, superintendents didn't work on Fridays and Saturdays. So I never did work Friday or Saturday. I come back Sunday at 12 o'clock and close it up. My ranger wanted to go to a wedding. So I said, okay, I work for you Friday, Saturday. So I'm writing camp permits Friday night. Drive up to this site, and I love to talk. So I'm talking to this person, He goes, "I don't think I've seen you here before." And I says, "Well, generally I don't work on weekends." And he goes on, he says, "Well, them other fellas, they drive a truck, you driving a car." And I go, "Yeah, some of us get a car, some of us get a truck." And he goes on and he asks, I said, "Well, the young fella's working today, he's wanting to go to a wedding outside there working his place," and blah, blah, blah. And he goes on and goes on. And he asked, I can't remember what the other question he asked me, something else. And his wife looked at him and says, "Don't you know he's the boss?" Now, if I had gone in and told him up front that, that would have, the whole atmosphere would have changed. But that was not my style to do that. I didn't push it. Like I said, you go into Seven Springs. Every time I go in there, they ask me, who's in charge there? Because the other man was white man, but I never would say, no, I'm the boss. No. Now, unless it came to a point, then I would tell them. But
So what was the transfer opportunities like? Because it looks like you switched around a lot to coastal.
no, I
Park.
didn't switch a lot.
Oh, okay.
I went to Jones Lake because of politics.
Oh.
There was a man who owned a restaurant. A restaurant and a motel in Jacksonville. They was going to tear it down. He had two managers. He had a white manager and a black manager. The black manager worked at night. The white manager worked in the daytime. So he was going to get his people a job with the state. The white manager went, when they had the ferry down here, go across the Himalaya. There used to be a ferry boat there. I don't know if you knew that or not. Yeah, there was a ferry boat. That bridge wasn't there. It was a ferry boat. White guy went down there to work. The black guy was supposed to come to Hammers to work. I'm here working. I'm a Ranger 1. I'm working. This man comes up and he says, tells me his name. He says, I'm supposed to start work here the 1st of August. I said, well, what job do you have? And I wasn't in charge. He said, I'm going to be a Ranger 1. That's what I was. And I was told to come down here and somebody would show me around and tell me what I was supposed to do. So I showed him, came around, showed him what he's supposed to do. At that time, we were getting one day off a week. That was my day off was Wednesday. Wednesday morning, I was in the Raleigh office. I walked in and I said, the secretary said, Cruz, who do you want to see? I said, they're making different. I can see Mr. Sutton and Mr. Ellis. And she said, well, which one? I said, it really doesn't make any difference. I need to see one of them. So Mr. Sutton, who was my immediate supervisor, he comes out and says, Claude, what's the problem? I said, well, I need to see somebody. So we go in, we sit down at the table. And Mr. Ellis says, who was the director, says, well, what's the problem? And I tell her the story about the man coming in. And Mr. Ellis says, well, Cruz, what have you done? I said, well, Mr. Ellis, I don't know of anything I've done. He said, maybe that's the problem. I almost died. I mean, really, I thought I was being fired. And so they laugh, and then they tell me the story of what happened. So then the job didn't go through. So Mr. Sutton tells me, go to that man and tell him to start and let it come back down again. So I go to the fellow and I tell him, you need to push it if you want to come to the job there. You need to push it. So he goes back to his man and he comes back. So they open up, they gave a position. They put the position at Jones Lake because there was only one ranger down there. So they put the position at Jones Lake. So Mr. Sutton comes to me and he says, he's my immediate supervisor. We got the position and it's at Jones Lake. And I said, that fella ain't going to Jones Lake because he's got his house and everything in Jacksonville. He's not going to go to Jones Lake. And Mr. Sutton says, well, that's where we're going to offer it to him. So I'm thinking to myself, if that man's got enough pool to get a job created, get a position created, he'll have enough position to get enough pool to get me fired. So I told my son, I'll go to Jones Lake. So I went to Jones Lake. Well, the man worked a year and then he quit. So then I came back to Hammocks. Mm-hmm. That's how that went.
That was pretty smart.
I mean, we got the position, so they had two rangers at Jones Lake. They got two at Hammocks, and they have two at Reedy Creek. That's how that came about.
And did you come back to Hammocks as a Ranger too? Or
came back as a Ranger too. And when I got drafted, I went into service, and at that time they had this thing where, if you go in, you come back. If you come back to work within 30 days, you get your same job back or better. So when I came back, that made me a superintendent. And a lot of people got upset about that because they thought I shouldn't have been a superintendent at that time. They just didn't think I had enough time in. But it went through. And because the fellow that was a Ranger 1 was promoted to up to Ranger 2. And they weren't going to cut him back. They wouldn't cut his salary. So that was it. The turtle program, we started it. The loggerhead turtles, mm-hmm. tagging and keeping records of it. The full moon in May, not the full moon in June, is the peak time for turtles to nest. Well, all the locals, they would load up on boats and they go over there and they kept the boat, up and down the beach, and tourists wouldn't come on. So talked to my supervisor, and we talked about it. Well, we keep people off the beach those 3 nights, and that was a change for the locals. That was a change for the locals because that's what they had always been doing. So we had to have extra staff to come in to tell people they couldn't go over there those 3 nights. And we did have camping those 3 nights in June, July, or the full moon. This 3 nights they did. When I came to Hamilton, when I came back in '64, the ferry boats were contracted out. We had a contractor who come in, and the man we had was from, his name was Glenn Knight. He was from Mohead City. We paid him $45 every time he made a trip over. He got $45 for a round trip, which is not a lot of money, but he gets what he got. Well, no, that's not right. He got $45 for 9 trips. Whether he made one or not, he still got $45. And there were a few people coming over. This is on up into late 60s, maybe 70s. People were coming down, and there were a few white people coming. And they wouldn't bring them over. You don't want to go over there, it's only blacks over there, blah, 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 blah. And he said it to the wrong person. That lady went to Raleigh, and she told him. So they fired him. Because he claimed he wasn't going to work for me. And then
Was he white or black?
He was white.
He was white. Okay.
He wasn't going to work for me. He wouldn't work for me. So they put out the bids, and another man got the contract. And what would really irritate me, they would negotiate contracts, and I wouldn't be in them. You follow what I'm saying? So if you negotiate a contract with somebody, I'm over here, then they tell, okay, now you got to work for him, and they go, no, we made the deal with you. So we had to get that over to the people in Raleigh that, if you're going to negotiate a contract, I need to be close by. I don't have to say anything, I just need to be close by. That happened when they built the residence there. The architect, they came in and they did everything, they negotiated, the bids went out. And this man comes down there and he's telling me what I got to do. Well, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Well, I'm going to call Mr. Akins. I'm going to call him. You call whoever you want to. I'm not going to do that. So he calls Mr. Akins, and Mr. Akins comes down, and he tells them, Cruz won't do this, and Cruz won't do this, and Cruz. And Mr. Akins says, okay, I'll go back to Raleigh and we'll see what we can do. So when Mr. Akins leaves, he looks at me and he says, he ain't your boss. I said, no, he's not my boss. He's working for me. Mr. Akins is the contract. I mean, he don't work for me, but he was, he's support for us. He's not my boss. So then we had to have a meeting with mines, and it's amazing, folks. Negotiate those obstacles like that.
So I do have one last question on so rangers now have that yearly alert where all the rangers in the state get to one place. Mm-hmm. Did you have much interaction with the mountain rangers?
Oh, yeah.
Did they have any black rangers up there, or did you mostly have?
Let me tell you, 80, 84, 85, I want to think there were 12 black rangers. With the superintendent, there were 12 of us. I think it was 12. Might have been 14. And we started a little thing the Saturday after Labor Day. We would meet at Jones Lake, just the black rangers. And we did that for about 3 years, and then it kind of died out. But yeah, and there were no black rangers in the western part of the state for a long time. They were all in the east. There were no black rangers in the western part of the state. Secretary Lee, did you know Howard Lee? You didn't know Howard Lee? Howard Lee was the mayor of Chapel Hill. He was a black man. Ran for the Senate, almost made it. I mean, he was really, but he was running against it, don't you? Mm-mm. He came real close, but he didn't make it. But anyway, he was head of Department of Natural Resources, Economic Development, Natural Resources, and his HR people were 2 black ladies, and everything had to go through them. So they would, if something went up that didn't look right, they wouldn't prove it. So consequently, we had, there were probably 4 black rangers that I recommended that got hired. Did you know William Berry? Okay, he was a district superintendent of the East, but I hired him. I mean, I came through, he worked here with me, and a fellow named Herman Spates, Lyndon Sutton, all those. When I was at Cliffs, I hired Lyndon. Quentin Barnes, you probably don't know him, but he had to go. Quentin Barnes. Who's another one? Herman Spates, did I name him? All those guys. They were all black, but we were recommending them. Now, from what I understand, there may be 2, but for a long time there was only one black ranger in the division. That was Shed.
Shedrick, Jordan, yeah.
So if nobody's pushing it, well, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there. We didn't integrate. We didn't integrate. We desegregated. That's what we done. When you integrate, what do? Put them together.
Yeah.
But you desegregate. When they desegregated the schools, the first thing they done was closed all the black schools. You do know that, don't you?
Yeah. Yep.
You've heard it anyway.
Fired all the black teachers, the
They
black
fired all-
principals.
And made principals, not resource officers, truant officers, and all that kind of stuff. All your football coaches, they had to be assistants. See, I was here when they bombed the high school in Jacksonville. And so, you don't want to know. Yeah. They, graduation supposed to be like, I don't know what day, it's on Sunday. They went in and they set the bomb to go off at 3 o'clock. Not knowing they set it for 3 o'clock in the morning instead of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 o'clock in the morning, they blow the thing up over there, the lab or whatever it was. And so they couldn't have graduation. So then the next year, the only reason they done it because they were going to desegregate the school next year. They didn't want the kids to go to Georgetown High School. So all the black school, that was the only black school in the county. So then all those kids had to go to other schools.
I'm wondering, if you could talk about, that time when they desegregated, hammocks, and you said that you were the first that you hired a white lifeguard. And what was the visitor population like? Was it mainly black and then it started changing?
Yeah, it started changing. And my first year here in the summer of '64, we probably had 4,000 people for the whole summer. And a lot of those were repeat people. A lot of the teachers who knew about it came down. Then it grew a little bit more, and then, like I said, in the late 70s, 79, more and more white people started to come. They were more, and probably by 74, it was probably half and half, but now it's probably 90% white. It's a pretty place. I mean, there's nothing pretty, but the time that you want to go, you don't want to go there in December. I mean, in July. It is just too hot, folks. It's hot. But now I've had some good times. In the fall of the year, you go out on that beach and there's nobody out there on that beach, and you can walk for 3 miles and not see a soul. I mean, it's just the water rolling on it, and it's so peaceful, so quiet and tranquil, just nice. But what we wanted, and I say what the colored people wanted was not offered at Hammond's. It was just not offered there. The mainland is going to be a little different. They get some things here that I think it's going to be. I think it'll start. Black people will start coming because it's going to be a little different. You're going to have some nice picnic areas. You're not going to be able to. I mean, you'll be able to, drive pretty close to them. But if you go to over there, you got a half mile to walk to get to the ocean. Right? It's a half mile walk, and that's a good walk. They have a golf cart now. And people with disabilities, you can request it, and they can have somebody to, pick you up on the golf cart and take you to the ocean. And I understand, I think they've got the big wheelchairs now with the big wheels on them. They roll you down to the ocean. They were supposed to be getting some.
Now, you said you were at Cliffs. Is that where you retired from, or did you come back here?
Not retired from the Cliffs.
What made you decide to switch to the Cliffs?
It was a promotion.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense.
It was a
that
promotion.
Makes sense.
And I went there, I went there in '81, and I stayed to 98, I guess it was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering how long you had been retired.
Yeah. Then,
And-
but then I moved back here because was home. I came back here. Before I had bought property here before that, so I came back here and built a home here, just up the road a little ways.
Do you have any stories from Cliffs that stand out?
Oh yeah, there's some there. It's people. I'll tell you one about the man in the campground. I had another one going. Have you been to the Cliffs?
Oh, I used to work there.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
You know that the beach down there, that grass, it's all pretty down there. You got the lake. A lot of people think they're swimming in the river, but it's the lake. They don't realize that lake is probably 20 feet above the river. But anyway, we didn't allow glass on the beach in that grass. If you get down there and break a bottle, somebody's gonna get hurt. Well, this man came in, had a baby, but he had glass bottles. Sir, you can't take that down there. We'd be glad to put it up here in the concession stand, bring your baby back up, and it was his grandchild, and you tell him to come back. So he argues with me, and he argues with me about this, and why I'm all wrong, and why this is happening, and why this is happening. And Brownie Southern, you probably didn't know Brownie, but he was a ranger there before I went there. But anyway, and I said, "You see that white man coming up right there?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You go ask him and see what he says." So, and I'm a couple of feet behind him. Get down there. He says, "This fella right here, he won't let me bring my cool down here, and I got my baby bottle in it, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah." And Brown looks at him and he says, "So he told you that?" "Well, he's the boss." You talking about being mad. He was some kind of mad. But I mean, those are things you have to overcome. I'm going to tell him, no, you just see the white man. Go ask him and see what he tells you. I mean, just.
So I know when I worked at Cliffs, like the visitation was overwhelmingly white.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was Hispanic.
They were actually coming out more, but it was mostly white people, even though
Mm-hmm.
we had that huge Hispanic group that lived next door.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a language barrier.
Right. I tried to hire a Hispanic person when I was there, just for that reason. But go ahead.
So what was the visitation like at Cliffs when you were?
It was about the same.
About the
Now,
same.
what happened at the Cliff was there's a big thing on Easter Monday. All those black people from Kinston would come to the park on Easter Monday. Now, my thing is you've got to educate your public on how to use a state park. Everybody doesn't know how to use it. When I was at Cliff, we tried very hard to educate the Hispanics on what you could do and what you couldn't do in a state park. You just can't go out there and go to cutting trees and drinking liquor everywhere and that type of stuff. But anyway, they would take over on Easter Monday, and they would just do all kinds of things. I mean, they just do all kinds of things. And so they wanted to calm that down a little bit. And so they hired a black ranger there, and that helped. And then I went there as a superintendent, and that calmed it down an awful lot. But we had an incident that happened where we drained the lake. Did you ever drain while you were there?
We had to repair the dam.
Yeah. We drained it, retired it, diving towel.
Okay.
We opened the valve, I want to think like 2 days after Labor Day. And before Christmas, we closed the valve back. And in May of the next year, that pond, it wasn't no water in that thing. It did not rain, it did not snow. It didn't do anything. And the people in Raleigh had a fit. I mean, they came after me, but I had it all documented. I had sent a letter and it had been approved to drain the lake, to repair the diving towel. And came a storm in late July. Hurricane came in and filled it back up. But we only had a couple of weeks, That summer really hurt us. The people never started to come back after that. While I was there, they may have. But the summer before that, a lifeguard come up to me and he says, Mr. Cruz, he said, "I can't see those people out there." I said, "What do you mean you can't? I can't tell what they're doing. There's too many people in the water." I said, "Son, if somebody falls down, somebody's going to step on them, they'll pick them up. That's how many people out there." I mean, They'll pick. I mean, it was just. I think one of the things we had something like 1,400 swimmers that day. Just people just. That was the parking. Those parking lots were filled. Well, they've taken some of the parking lots now, haven't they? Or have they? I don't know. All those parking lots are filled. They were filled. You know, we were sending people down to the overlook the park and let them walk back. That was done.
For reference, there's like 5 bays of parking at that swim lake.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's about 5 of them. You get a lot of cars in it. But those are some good times. Yeah, your staff. It was changed there going to the cliffs. Here was just when I was here, just 2 people, 2 permanent people, myself and one other ranger. Of course, we had a big summer staff. But then I went to the cliff and I've got 2 rangers, a secretary, and a maintenance man. So that was a big difference. It took me a while to learn how to delegate that authority out, but it worked good. It worked good.
Did you have black employees, or were they all white?
No, I had black. My son, that's what I said. My summer staff, when I was here, my staff basically was black. I had a few white, but basically was black. When I went to the cliff, it was the same thing. I hired basically black people. I went up there the other 2 summers ago. I didn't see any black people. Did y'all have any black people? I know.
Oh, I was there.
But I did. It's when you're interviewing a person, and you've got 2 people. They both meet the minimum qualification. And this one over here may have a little bit more experience. Now, so consequently, you're going to give, most people are going to give that person a job. But look at this person here. Look at the potential of what he might have. Even though he's black, he might have the potential to do it. And that's the way I did it. You know, I would hire and make the recommendation. And so I always got a good grade on my handling my personnel. You know what's that thing called, the PPO?
Oh, I think it's changed now. Are you talking about like the what we used to? You guys have it too. We have it at ECU.
You know, where you have to make the goals and all this stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, because I always did. I had when I was here at Hammonds, I don't know what year that was, but I ended up with 3 white lifeguards. Black boys didn't want to work on that beach in the sun, so I had a hard time getting them. So I had 3 white boys, and they were working. They were back then. The seasons only got paid once a month, and that was pitiful. Those boys came in out of school. They had no money. I carried them to the barbershop and paid for the haircut. Because back then you could have long hair, you know, all that good stuff. I got them trimmed. I didn't just trim it up, you know, make it look good. Carried them over to the island. I went on there one day, this boy was eating a mustard sandwich. I said, son, what are you doing? He said, well, Mr. Cruz, we don't have any. Look, well, don't do that. Tell me what, you know, because you only get paid the month. So anyway, bought him food and all that stuff. Well, my supervisor comes down later on in the year, and these boys, we started to feed them. My wife started cooking for them on Sundays, you know, the boys. Anyway, my supervisor comes down, and he talks to them, and he talks to me. And so when he leaves, one of the boys said, Mr. Cruz, he's going to take us to the movie tonight and put us in the motel. Okay? If he asks, you can tell him anything you want to, but if he asks you what time I come to work or when I'm working, tell him you don't know, you got to ask me. You know? I said, but if he asks you how you like me, if you don't like me, you just tell him I can't stand it. Whatever you want to tell him. But if anything he asks about me personally, you tell him he's got to come and ask me. Well, brought the boys back that Sunday morning, and boy got out of the car. He went to Fort Macon, and the boy got out of the car. Mr. Cruz, you was right. He come and ask me what time you come to work and what you do this what. So I says to him when he comes back to Fort Macon, why are you asking boys about me? Why don't you ask me? I've been down here for ever how many years it was. You've never come and taken me to. Well, I wanted them to stay. I wanted them to stay all the summer. No. You down here asking about my business. You don't do that. Anyway, Later on in the year, the lifeguards of Fort Macon left. Only had one. I have three. So he comes by and he says, I want to take one of your lifeguards to Fort Macon. You can get by with two, and they'll have two down there. I said, well, I'm not going to tell one of them to go. We can go out here on the beach and we can ask them. We go out on the beach, and he says, I need a lifeguard to go to Fort Macon. Which one want to go? Well, two of them spoke up right quick and said, no, they won't go on. This one boy was a little slow, and he said, well, you'll go. I'll pick you up in the morning. So we walk off the beach and get back up to the bathhouse. And I don't know what the boys told him, but the little young man comes and he said, and I'm not calling names, he comes in and he says, I can't go to Fort Macon. And he says to him, why you can't go to Fort Macon? He says, because I didn't ask my mama. Anyway, it got real ugly, it got real ugly. And I had to tell my supervisor, no, you can't talk to him like that. No, you can't do that. And I know what happened. When we left, them boys told him, said, Miss Cruz didn't tell you had to go. You ain't got to go down there if you don't want to go down there. I know that's what they said. After that, they never bothered my staff. They never bothered my staff after that. Because they always stayed, and we always had a good time. Went to the cliffs with the same thing. We had a good time there too. At the end of the year, we have a big picnic and cook a pig, and they don't do that now, do they?
I never got any pig.
We cook a pig and go up there to the shop, cook a pig and close the gate, play music and dance, and go swimming in the lake. I bet you done that, don't you? You did that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I know you did.